when you look at the landscape of the church in Nigeria, you would notice that it's my own personal reflection, and this is a very, very reasoned opinion. It's my very personal and reasoned and studied opinion that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, at least, I'm also old enough to know a few things about 30 years ago. And it is my observation that 30 years ago, 20 years ago, Jesus Christ was more popular on the streets of Nigeria than Jesus Christ is on the streets of Nigeria today. By that I mean that 30 years ago, if somebody said that they were born again, it had a meaning. And that meaning was a meaning that was understood culturally. That there were cultural implications that people brought to the assumption that the person they are talking with is born again. Even if those people are not Christians themselves. But that I'm about to engage with someone that is born again. There is a set of assumption that they bring from home. With just that understanding that the person I'm going to meet, the person I'm going to talk to, the person I'm going to deal with is born again. Because there were cultural implications of the faith. In fact, you know, I've studied around a little bit, and there are still societies in Nigeria. There are entire tribes, there are entire people groups in Nigeria that even though many of them may not be personally born again, the cultural impact of Christianity during a long lost revival is so strong till today. That if you enter the place, you can still see the impact of Christianity in that community when a revival had hit them. But the reason for that is what I think that you and I need to pay close attention to. Why this is significant is because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the church in Nigeria was not as knowledgeable as she is today. The fathers that were center stage 30 years ago, they didn't know half the revelation that we know today. They didn't. The rhema that we rhematize today, 30 years ago, it wasn't commonplace. So that there are so many people in this audience right now that if you gave them this microphone and they were to speak to an audience that was made up of the ministers that ministered, you know, in the 70s and the 80s, those ministers will be shocked at the level of rhema that you are going to be spewing. But the point is this: why is it that we seem to know so much now than was known 30 years ago, and yet Jesus Christ was more popular on the streets of Nigeria 30 years ago than he is today? To tackle it at some point, because I believe that in the last 30 years the church has gained at the expense of Jesus. Because again, 30 years ago, the church in Nigeria was way poorer than she is today. The church in Nigeria has incrementally, over time, has become richer and richer materially, but it is as if there's an inverse relationship between our gain and the gain of our Lord. That it looks as if the more we were gaining, the more Jesus was losing. In the last 30 years, we are the ones that have gained. We have become very rich, we have become very famous, we have become very popular. We have opened all kinds of institutions. We are now competing with some of the richest people in the world, but all of that has not translated to fame for Jesus on the street. So today, people will still say, hey, my daughter, beware of men, especially pastors. And I'd like for you to know that Jesus is worthy to receive glory, honor, and power, for he has created all things for his pleasure. The pleasure of God is the only motivation that moves God in the direction of anywhere that God is properly at work. God goes to work for his own sake. That's why you notice that the fathers before us, when they got into difficult circumstances and they are about to bring intercession, and it doesn't look like they can find any ground in order to prevail with God, their last resort is for your name's sake. When you cannot find merit, in the person you are interceding for. You cannot even find merit in your own self. There is a lost cause. What do people say? They say, oh God, for the sake of your name. And the moment the fathers will bring the name of the Lord into the equation, you see how it was as if they put God in a tight place. That name has suffered so much on the streets of our cities, on the streets of our nation. I'm old enough to know that there was a time in this country that if people were looking for employees to put in sensitive places in their businesses, they look for Christian young men and young ladies. They say, oh, those SU people, they won't eat your money. So you will see Al-Hajis, you will see Muslims. I'm sure most of you here, you know what I'm talking about. It will be a Christian young man that will be the account officer in their filling station, because they know that these SUs will not eat your money. At that time, the Christianity in Nigeria was allergic to corruption. But now, we are rheumatizing everything. We are very deep. And everywhere you go, you now hear people say, what that passage is really saying, what that passage is really saying, seeking to turn on its head everything that has been previously most surely believed among us. Unfortunately, 9 out of 10 times when they are saying what the passage is actually saying, what they end up saying is what the passage is actually not saying. And one of the ways that you know the true test of true ministry, it's its impact on the street. We are just in an echo chamber in much of the places, all over the place. We are the only ones that understand what we are talking. We are the only ones that are excited about what we are talking. We are the only ones that value what it is that we are talking. The excitement happens just within the 4 walls of the church, just like Apostle was saying. So that's why everybody is struggling to be a big man of God. Because this is like the beginning and the end of the relevance that we can now have is among ourselves. Yet, if I read well in scriptures, it says that you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth.